Hello class, and new people who didn't see my last video, of course, hello to you too. Here are my top tips for people trying to learn a foreign language. If you're native English, you can learn from this as well, maybe. Who knows? It's important to say that everything is opinion. There's no facts here. I haven't done any kind of tests. I can confidently say that no animals have been hurt in the process of making this film. And if you have different opinions, that's absolutely fine by me. So, let's get on with it, shall we? Tip number 1. Work at home using your own initiative. Teachers are a fantastic resource for anybody trying to learn a language. Of course they are, that's a fact. However, you can't actually learn a language effectively without doing some work at home as well. Only about 20% of learning is actually done in class. That does sound like a lot, but really it's only a small amount. No, I don't have research to back that up. It's important to realize that teachers are just there to open the door for you. You're the person who has to walk through it. Tip number 2. Use flashcards. I cannot stress just how useful and important flashcards can be. There actually is scientific support for this, but I can't list anything because of copyright. It's quite simple really. You make flashcards of everything you want to learn. What is a flashcard? I knew you were going to ask that. I've got one right here. And unfortunately it's really big. So on one side you have the word that you want to learn in your own language, and on the other side you have your target language. In this case I've chosen Czech and French because, well, I can. So the English word 30 translates as the Czech Třicet and as the French 30. So what you do now is you play a little game. You take all of your flashcards and you read all of the words in your own language. Each time you pick up a card, you try and guess the opposite language, your target language. If you get it right, you put it into one pile. If you get it wrong, you put it into another pile. After a short period of time, you try the wrong pile again, see if you can get them right and put them into the right pile. And the right pile you don't look back at for another hour, and then for 4 hours, and then a day, a week, a month, however long you want to make it. If that sounds too complicated, you can have a look for language resources online. You'll probably find this game in computerized form. Tip number 3. Speak to, or at least listen to, a native speaker. There's nothing like practicing your desired language with a native speaker. A fluent speaker is okay, but you can't get better than a native. You'll never stop sounding foreign until you speak to a native. As human beings, we often copy what we hear in order to adapt to our current situation. What you'll find is that over time, a natural accent will come without you even thinking about it. Not only this, but it's a great challenge trying to listen to a native speaker. A lot of you will be struggling to understand my accent right now. A lot of students say this to me when they first meet me, but a lot of students also say that they enjoy the challenge of trying to understand me. One of my favourite moments as a teacher was when one of my students told me that at first he couldn't understand a word I said. He'd set himself the challenge of understanding me. He said to himself, "If I can understand you, I can understand anybody." And over time it got a lot easier for him, and he felt a lot better by the end of the whole course, like he could really do anything in language, and that's why I've put this tip here. Practicing with a native speaker and being understood is one of the best confidence boosts. Tip 4. Regularly practice pronunciation. This ties in a bit with the last point, but I wanted to make it a separate point anyway. Usually when people first speak to each other, pronunciation is the biggest barrier. When two people have problems pronouncing sounds, it's very difficult for them to understand each other. Or if they're not used to a new accent or anything like this, it causes major problems. Practice pronunciation often as you can. As a singer, you have to train your voice to make certain sounds and make sure it's fit all the time. Like when you're training your body in the same way, you have to do a lot of exercises to make sure your body works properly. Language is exactly the same. You need to train your muscles and you need to practice pronunciation so it comes to you without you even thinking about it. Perfect example of this was when I said 30 in Czech. My aha Czech is terrible. Different languages use the tongue and mouth muscles in very different ways, and it's important that your mouth gets a regular workout. Students and teachers often make the mistake of not going through pronunciation properly, and it's really a bad thing, because if you can't pronounce the words, you can't speak the language. Tip number 5. Watch cartoons and films that you are familiar with in the target language with same language subtitles if possible. I'm sure there'll be at least one film or TV program that you've seen so many times that you've practically memorized the script. If not, I'm sure that there'll be some films and TV programs that you're very familiar with and you know kind of what's going on in each scene. Even though at first the words may be nonsense to you, you understand what's going on and you can put the puzzle together and understand the basic idea. And over time you'll start to subconsciously pick up the language this way if you watch it more than once. Tip number 6. Be confident. I'm going to let you in on a little secret when it comes to learning languages, and in the world in general actually. Confidence is the most important tool when having a conversation. Assuming you're not speaking to your teacher during a particularly difficult correction task, The person you're speaking to isn't listening to every single word you say. Instead, they're listening to the basic idea and they fill in all the rest themselves. If you're confident when you talk, no matter how many mistakes you make, people are going to be interested in you and they're going to try to understand what you're saying. Tip number 7. Laugh at yourself. Třicet. Ha! It sounds like I swallowed the word and now it's trying to come back out through my nose. Everyone says stupid things when they're first learning a language and they're not really confident with the use yet. The important thing is that you can laugh. If you say the stupidest thing a foreigner has ever said in that language, just laugh at it. Because if you can laugh at your mistakes, you won't lose any confidence. I remember a student once telling me how important it was to listen to his ankle. He said it with a straight face, like I just did. When he said that, all the students and myself, we couldn't help but laugh. I also, of course, had to ask him if he also listens to his elbow. When he finally realised what he said, of course he laughed as well. And he very quickly corrected himself. Of course, I meant my uncle, but my ankles are always right as well. His ability to laugh in that situation actually helped him in 2 ways. First of all, he's never ever going to forget that mistake. And secondly, he was so confident. It didn't matter that he'd made a silly mistake like that. His confidence did not drop. Tip number 8. Avoid people who aren't patient wherever possible. In a shop, on a bus, in prison, of course this is unavoidable. However, wherever possible, try not to speak to someone who don't have the patience to listen and try and understand you. All that's going to do is knock your confidence and you're both going to be frustrated at the end of it. Instead, you want to talk to people who are very patient, who want to try and help you and do their best to make themselves understood. And they do all this with a smile on their face. If the person isn't doing these things, they're not worth talking to. They're just a waste of your time. Tip number 9. Don't get caught up on grammar, just speak. The most frustrating thing that students do is spend 30 seconds trying to get out a sentence because they're trying so hard to make the sentence perfect. It doesn't have to be. Now, I'm not trying to say that isn't a very good goal to have in the future, to speak English as best as you possibly can. However, it is really important that you do speak and don't have very long silences when you're trying to figure out what to say. If you want to practice, this is the best method because you get a lot of words and a lot of sentences out in a short period of time. And if you're having a conversation, of course, it's the best because the conversation goes a lot quicker. Don't worry about your mistakes, just talk. And finally, tip 10. This is the most important tip of all. No matter what happens, when you're learning a language, don't give up. Learning is a lifelong process. It never ends. The best way to do it is to set a pace that is reasonable at the start, not too fast, and keep going at that same pace, because if you ever slow down, you'll never get back to that starting pace. So don't give up. Just one honourable mention at the end. Make sure you have fun when you're learning. I didn't want to add it into the top 10 tips because I think the 10 tips were more important, but this is also very, very useful. Your homework this week is to watch your favourite TV programme in English with English subtitles. Or if you are English, then in whatever your target language is, with your target language's subtitles, of course. If you want to tell me what show you're watching, great! Leave it in the comments below. So, thanks for your time and I'll see you on Monday with the glossary. Have a good week. Bye.